And I'm glad you brought up gold, because central banks have been buying gold at record levels unseen in the last 50 or 60 years, right? Since we got off the gold standard. And it does feel like you have the BRICS coming together in August to, set a gold, probably a gold currency, right? So China has enough gold to basically do a $6 trillion currency, and backing that up with about 2% gold, right? Gold reserves. So, how do you see gold being revalued here? And that's why these central banks are going crazy. I mean, something is setting the tone here, right? What do you think that is?
I do. I think that there's a lot of things that have gone on behind the scenes that the public is not privy to. I'm not privy to, but there's a lot of coincidences that don't seem to be coincidences, right?
Yeah.
You can only have so many that add up,
yeah.
and then it's no longer a coincidence.
Yeah.
So
it's an agenda.
I'm confident that we will see some type of revaluation for gold, but that can't. There's not enough gold to back everything. I think that there'll be energy. I think there'll be data. I think that there'll be other commodities that fall within baskets for countries that back their CBDC. And it'd be interesting to see how everything plays out in that regard. But I mean, in 2019, they made gold a tier 1 asset.
Yep.
BIS did, and that hasn't been the case. It was a tier 3 asset prior to then. Tier 1 means it's riskless.
Yep.
The only thing that's been riskless for the last 50 years prior to that was U.S. Treasuries.
Yep. The golden standard.
And it'll be, I think, and I'll give you a date. I think when they come together on August 24th or 22nd through the 24th, I think that there'll be something significant happen around that time.
Yeah, no, man, I completely agree with you. And you said also something interesting there, a tier 1 asset. And I am from the background and belief that something like XRP or Quant or XLM could be considered or turned into a tier 1 asset. So banks can hold it on balance sheets and not have to, what do you, because I see you smiling, so you have some type of knowledge or opinion. What do you think on this?
Not a whole lot of other people have discussed this. I mentioned it a few times. I do think that XRP ends up being a tier 1 asset inside the banking system.
Yep.
They need something else that provides collateral for derivatives. Okay.
Yes.
And so there's U.S. Treasuries has been that thing for a long time. And they play a funny game with these treasuries. If you understand the derivatives market, they will hold it and then they will loan the same treasury to somebody else that they also use as collateral for these derivatives. And so if U.S. Treasuries were ever to go, or we were to default, the entire derivatives market would collapse on itself. We saw something similar in 2008 when, the underlying derivatives for the collateral that was the underlying derivative of the housing market, they had rolled up all the, I'm amiss right now with the term, collateralized debt obligations, right? So they would roll those up and then they would sell them off as premium collateral, when in reality they were not the ninja loans they were doing. Anyway, so when we saw the collateral collapse, the whole market fell apart, and that's what caused the devastation of 2008. And so I hope that the U.S. Treasury ends up being backed by something physical and tangible, and we don't default, because that would be catastrophic for the global economy and the derivatives market. But if you had something else that you could step in with that banks were already holding, be advantageous to have that in place. So again, speculation, we'll see. But that would also provide, a really good reason that you'd be able to take collateralized loans against your XRP at favorable terms, and also be able to lend it to other people at pretty favorable terms as well.
What is favorable terms to you? Is that like 5%, 6%, 10%? That way people can have an understanding of what you think is favorable.
Yeah, so on the lending side, you would returns around there, right? So they're going to have to be able to generate something higher than what they're paying you for the asset. So I think 4 or 5 is pretty favorable, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And then if you have favorable terms on the collateralized loan side, they would be giving you something between 2 and 5% as your interest rate for loaning them the collateral. They would incentivize you at a very low interest rate to do so.
And so I've been talking to my community for this for almost 2 years, and I'm from the belief that everything or 90% of things that have value are going to be tokenized, right? You have stocks, bonds, derivatives, right? They're starting to do some testing right now. So you have real estate, which is 328 trillion, give or take globally, oil, natural gas, carbon credits, all of that stuff, right? And that value is going to be brought onto blockchain. So, when I think of, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, let's say the derivatives market does come onto blockchains. What is the best blockchain in the world that could handle such, I mean, even 10, 20, 30% of the derivatives market. And you really kind of narrowed it down by it has to be ISO compliant, right? Because banks need to be able to use that, right? And so what are your thoughts?
I want to make that delineation there between ISO compliant tokens and the token itself. So
yeah,
there's really only two networks that even operate with a messaging standard. The ISO standard is a messaging standard that makes sure that banks get certain data and it's formatted in a specific way that they can read it.
Yeah.
So Ripple has RippleNet, and I believe Stellar Lumens or Hyperledger has another offering that offers ISO messaging along with the instant payments. So there really aren't like ISO tokens or ISO networks. There are messaging standards that are that, but I understand what you're talking about, like just to categorize all the ones that we like. It's a good term. Yeah.
Do you think though that value, like, I mean, I'm just trying to think, right? Because you have like Quant, which I don't really think Quant is kind of set up for that. But do you think the derivatives market is going to come onto the blockchain, and that's going to be the new standard over the next 3 to 5 years? How do you see that happening, and like where do you think that value is going to go?
It's going to be a phased approach. You can't, like, people talk about this overnight thing, and I think we're going to have some jumps. Okay, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. I'm just saying that there will be multiple jumps. It's not just going to be like 0 to 100. Okay. It might be 0 to 100, but it's not going to be 0 to a million.
Yeah.
Okay. And so with that, like, as different pieces of the financial infrastructure are moved on chain, that volume over the network would raise the price of the token to match. I think the derivatives market is probably the last piece of that, somewhere beyond 2027.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know they're like HBAR is working with tokenizing bonds. I've seen some different banks do some different tests with Ethereum, and so I do think they're going to kind of be spread out, on multiple chains. I don't think there's just going to be one standard winner, but I do think a lot of that stuff's going to happen. What are your?
It'd be difficult to move all of that volume even across the XRPL if you did want to, like, say you wanted to pick one chain. The TPS on that network can scale up pretty high, but the only way that it really becomes viable is through side chains and interoperability between other networks, right? So like right now you have multiple day settlement for banks, which is the problem that the blockchain and DLT are trying to solve with a lot of these networks. You want instant settlement. Well, right now we batch a lot of payments and then we send one payment to cover the difference, right? So you could have a bunch of transactions, so like Matic, right? It may be a layer 2 or a secondary layer that batches a bunch of transactions. And then once their volume is large enough, one payment is sent across the network that moves all the money, right? I think that that's more realistic as to how this will play out. Now, there may be some things in the works that haven't surfaced yet. I don't hear anybody talking about Cobalt and what that will do for the XRPL. So we'll see what transpires with that, if it's ever implemented or at scale. You've also got Codius, right? Yeah. That's in the background. I don't know what implications will happen after those things are implemented or what they're capable of. So I'm just speaking to the constraints that currently exist. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the future is multi-chain.
Yeah, and did you want to maybe touch on Cobalt and whatever? Do you have any kind of information you want to share? Because I don't really know anything about it, and I would love just you know anything about it? No.
It's like so PolySign was this way for a long time. Yeah. Same thing with Codius, right? Like people, they kind of whisper it in the background and it's there, but it's ethereal. You have no idea what that actually means or what will happen. Yeah. The only thing that I've heard about Cobalt is that it reduces the settlement time and increases the volume as a layer 2 on the XRPL.
Gotcha.
Don't know outside of that.
All right. Yeah, man, I think we really are kind of at the start of the globe kind of changing into tokenization. And, when you read a lot of these reports from Ripple, it does seem that people are becoming more bullish. Institutional clients are becoming more bullish on crypto. And I was listening to Larry Fink talk. He was talking about like searches on the BlackRock website where it's like 3,000 for, some random thing, and it was 600,000. So, with Larry now, saying positive things about Bitcoin because that's what his clients want. Where do you see Bitcoin, in the next bull run? Do you see it blasting past 100K, like maybe to 125 or 150, or do you think kind of 100K is like the top of Bitcoin in the next bull market?
There's two headwinds for Bitcoin in my opinion. One is the cost of energy, and at the same time the green narrative, right? So I'm here in
ESG?
Texas. I talk with the Texas Blockchain Council. Good people over there, but they're primarily funded by Bitcoin miners out in West Texas. And they use oil and other carbon emitting resources to create the energy that powers their miners.
Yeah.
I think that you could retrofit all the dams in the US with hydroelectric, infrastructure that would allow for miners to operate and then sell the excess power onto the grid. I think that that's a fantastic use case that could be presented that would allow the network to exist long into the future. I think Chris Larson coined that as useful proof of work. And I think if they can make a transition to that Bitcoin could exist, and that would significantly lower the energy costs and constraints on the network, right? So I don't think it'll ever be able to scale. I like Lightning Network. I think that they're trying to work, create other workarounds. We got people doing ordinals and other stuff on that network now. A lot of interesting things, right? That's one headwind. And then the other headwind is, and we'll see if this transpires or not. This is again, just a whisper in the background that I've heard. But if the constraint about the limited supply for Bitcoin was ever exploited, if there was ever a bug in the network that allowed more Bitcoin to be minted than 21 million, it would immediately fall apart.
Yeah.
And the only person I've ever heard talk about that is David Schwartz. And so maybe that's just BS and he's partisan to the XRPL, but he was around way back in the day and mined Bitcoin, right? And he was apparently friends with Satoshi. So we'll see. Those are the only two things that I think would inhibit, and then you got the tax piece of it, right? So there's certain jurisdictions that could tax the crap out of Bitcoin if they wanted to eradicate it. So those are really kind of the government, the green narrative, and then if the constraints around the network were to change, I think that all three of those could affect the long-term viability of that project.
Could I add one more?
Please, yeah.
We look at Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people, kind of don't understand, but a 51% attack might happen, and you do have Russia now, who is the second biggest mining pool of the Bitcoin network. Let's say Russia becomes number one and they control 51% of the network. I mean, that could really be a catastrophic event too, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So that's kind of the energy constraint problem, right?
Gotcha.
So let's say Bitcoin dropped back down to 15,000 a token, okay? And the rewards are just not there. So when that happens, there's a lot of miners that stop mining because it's not profitable. Well, that really centralizes the control on the network. You could end up with just 3, 4, 5 miners that control the entire network. And if any of those collude to change transactions, then that's a significant problem. It's a risk for that network. So at the time now, it is decentralized, right? And really, I've got a definition of decentralized that's a bit different than most people, but I put a constraint around it. So a constraint for me is no one miner or node controls more than 15% of the network or gets distributed rewards for more than 15% of the network's transactions. And under that constraint, I don't think that Bitcoin would meet that at the current time in a bear market. In a bull market, yeah, everybody's mining Bitcoin and it's probably decentralized enough to meet that standard. But that's the problem, right? So as energy costs continue to elevate, because it's going to, you have to have stronger and stronger or better and better computers to mine the Bitcoin. The energy constraint continues to go up. And if it no longer becomes profitable to mine on that network, then it consolidates the people that are willing to do so. So yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a possibility of a 51% attack if the profitability on the network were to diminish to a point where there was only a select number of miners that could facilitate transactions.
And I know we're coming up on 50 minutes, and I know you got other things you probably need to do today. I just have maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Please.
Any thoughts on the, when you read through all these kind of XRP documents and the core documents, you see that there's like 1,700 NDAs or contracts. Do you have any thoughts of what those NDAs could be about? I mean, you think that's about the escrowed XRP and sales to maybe the U.S. government or the World Bank, or what are your thoughts? I see you have a smile, so you probably have some opinion on it. He's like,
it's interesting.
What can I say?
It's interesting to me that Ripple tried to also redact some things in this lawsuit, right, that have come to the surface, that being one of them. And I think, and people are going to be mad about this, but I think for a long time XRP was a security.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I don't think it is any longer.
Yep.
And even the SEC has stated, maybe potentially after 2018, it was no longer a security. They made the XRPL Foundation to delineate, from Ripple XRP. I think it was in 2020 when that was formed. So I don't think that moving forward, sales on the secondary market could be considered securities, but I think for a pretty extended period of time, XRP was a security. And I think that all those transactions are under scrutiny, right, because of the lawsuit. And so, your guess is as good as mine. I can speculate all day with you. I feel there was a video that came out just recently of David Schwartz talking about how they would pay for a lawsuit and it would be a portion of the escrow.
From 2017.
Yeah, so your guess is as good as mine, but it seems awful likely that that's the case, what you mentioned before.
Yeah, and you notice that Ripple was really built to be the world's, I mean, the XRP ledger was really built to be the world's ledger. I feel like they had that in mind. And I think that's why they escrowed, 55 billion tokens, at the start. I think they did that for a particular reason. And you look at all these other, you look at XLM, you look at whatever, HBAR Quant, none of them kind of have this escrow, right? It's definitely there for a reason. And I think in time we're going to find out what it is. Maybe some of these NDAs have, end dates on when people can talk about it, but it is one of the most hush-hush things in crypto. Do you have anything that maybe we haven't discussed that you feel is a topic that you kind of want to bring up maybe before we end?
I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have,
this is really good, and I appreciate all the questions. These have been really good. I mean, I just I'll go back to harping on just being proactive, right? And soft plug, right? Like, this is what I do. Even if it's not with me, just educate yourself about how to manage wealth, be listening to podcasts, be listening to other people that have certifications and credentials and work in this space, whether it's family office or tax mitigation. Clinton Donnelly's fantastic. He kind of fear mongers a little bit when it comes to the taxes, but rightly so. The IRS is not anything to play with. Maybe they exist in the future, maybe they don't. But until they don't, I'm operating under the pretense that they do.
Yeah.
And so, I would just kind of harp on that. Educate yourself, put yourself around a good community of people that are going to be viable long-term. Vet people before the liquidity event happens.
Yeah.
Again, I did a lot of what I put together selfishly because I didn't want to be caught off guard on the other side of it and not have the team in place. Some people are going to laugh at you because they don't believe it, and those aren't the people that you want around anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So just do yourself a favor and make sure that you surround yourself with the right people before that happens, because there's going to be a lot of sharks that come out once you do have money, and it's going to be difficult to discern who to trust and who not to. And if the people were there beforehand and willing to help you then they're probably a good, genuine individual. So
well said, man. And you need to be prepared. And I'm so glad we had this conversation. What is the best place people can get a hold of you? Because I'm sure there's going to be people watching this that are like, man, I'm blown away by this guy's knowledge. He's got everything that, he's got the company to back it up. He has the knowledge. How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So just through the website, it's digitalfamilyoffice.io. You book a consultation. We've also got another portal there that we'll be able to facilitate the accounts with PolySign here shortly. Again, I should finalize that within the next week, and then we can move forward. That website, or if you want to be a part of the mastermind, you want to be a part of a community that is going to grow together and has good, genuine people, you can check that out at mastermind.beyondbroke.com. And again, I kind of walked through the different tiers there and what might fit you for whatever level you're at. But if the stipulation for that, if you're trying to be on board there, is you just friend me on LinkedIn so I can make sure, we try to keep a high integrity and a good culture within the community. And we want to make sure that the people that we're bringing in are hungry to learn. They're good, genuine people, and they're going to continue the culture that we've built.
Man, Jake, not every day do I get to talk to somebody as well educated and just trying to make positive change in this space. So I really genuinely thank you for your time today, man. And I wish you all the success in the world. You already have all the success in the world, but I wish you even more. And it's going to be an incredible, you're going to have a lot of business coming your way. And just thank you for your time. And hope we can have a conversation again soon and get some updates from you.
So thank you so much for the kind words, and I appreciate you having me. And same to you. You give a lot to the community, and we all appreciate you as well.
Appreciate it, man. All right, you have a blessed day, brother. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
You too.
All right.
We'll see you.
Bye, man. Thank you, Jake.